talking about trying to describe the unconscious, I actually go back to its classical origins, classical roots. And its classical roots, our conception of the unconscious actually arises not from Freud and Jung of the 19th century, but actually all the way back to several thousand years before Christ. In ancient Egypt, ancient Kemetic Egypt, they had a conception of the unconscious. You know, they were very advanced in astronomy, archaeology, mathematics, geometry, and also biology. I mean, they did a certain kind of surgery. They knew about the functioning of the brain and many other classical pieces of information about medicine that really weren't surpassed until the mid-18th century in Europe. Well, they also had a very sophisticated understanding of what they call the Amenta in the primeval waters of Nun. This is the unconscious. And that unconscious included not only our personal unconscious, which is, of course, the province primarily of Freud and Adler, but also the collective unconscious, the area that Jung talked about, and many others did, and Freud did also. He referred to it as the racial memory. But the ancient Kemetic Egyptians also talked about the vast, great netherworld, the unconscious of the literal world, out of which manifested the physical world. So on some level, they said the whole universe is conscious, and part of it emerges out of that unconscious into manifestation, and that is the conscious physical world, and also the conscious psychic world. So mine really goes back to that time, and its closest reflection today is probably that of Jung, the collective unconscious, and Freud's racial memory. That also, again, includes our individual unconscious, but also our family unconscious. So all these are different gradations and levels of a vast system that includes all of us, because consciousness itself is non-local. It's not trapped inside of our heads, inside of our brains. It's not. It's greatly beyond that. That is the true origin.
It's the feeling of being dead inside, disconnected, plugged in like a heroin addict to the drug in my hands, never too far out of reach, constantly locking in my life in a screen. I needed to unplug. This was controlling me. I needed to find a way back to myself. I needed a detox.
Human beings seem to have stumbled upon this at least 5,000 years BC. And what it is, it's Kundalini. Well, the ancient Dravidian Indians refer to it as Kundalini. The ancient Kemetic Egyptians refer to it as the Uraeus serpent. But other cultures all around the earth, we all have contact with it. It is a biogenetic energy or force intensely associated, closely associated with the unfoldment of the human nervous system. The human nervous system. As you know, the human nervous system is based upon the phenomenon of energy conducted by a phenomenon known as melanin. Melanin is a substance that absorbs light, absorbs quanta, and it transforms into higher and higher states of manifestation. This is the origin of our nervous system right there in our mother's womb, in our embryogenesis. When we begin to move out of that early stage and we elongate through that. That is our nervous system evolving. Well, Kundalini is the energy underneath or behind that. Is literally the quantum stream of energy that guides our nervous system. It is embedded in all human beings, regardless of who you are. It is our inheritance from who knows where, and it is at the root of our spiritual genius in innumerable different ways, and also the foundation of our science. And my own study of it and my own practice of it ratifies that for me. Kundalini is the inherent energy of consciousness. It is the evolutionary basis of our consciousness, the bioevolutionary base of our consciousness. And I want to emphasize to your audience that it is a physical phenomenon. It is not limited to physical, but it is embedded in a physical phenomenon. Your nervous system, my nervous system, in the earliest days, the earliest weeks of embryogenesis on forward, and is intimately associated with our consciousness. Human beings, we don't all of a sudden, when we get born, become conscious. No, we're conscious for a while before we're physically born. We know from near-death studies, thousands and thousands of cases of near-death studies, that for some period of time, we are still conscious after we are clinically dead. So we are conscious prior to our birth for some time, and we are conscious prior to our physical death for some time. And where that ultimately trails off to, we don't really know. That is still part of the great mystery. It is part of the great mystery. And again, consciousness, like energy itself, like matter and energy itself, is trans-temporal and trans-spatial. It is not localized in one place. That is the origin of our mysticism.
I suppose I used it as a distraction, a way to stop me from feeling this. Every betrayal, every loss. But there's a point where the food doesn't stop, the phone doesn't make it stop, nothing. At some point, I guess, it needs to be faced. I have to go inside. I've been distracting myself for too long. It's time to open to the darkness.
We need the unconscious to have certain areas that are forbidden. And it creates a barrier. In our earlier stages as human beings, when we were, let's say, immersed in nature, we had to deal with all kinds of things in our physical universe. And we had to be super alert of that. If we didn't survive. And we needed to be very aware of that. Well, as we became more, quote, civilized, unquote, in villages and in cities and larger societies and so forth, our ability to progress in becoming civilized, to a large extent, as Freud said, depended on our ability to deny, suppress, or repress parts of our minds. And so in that sense, the forces of repression and suppression that come from the unconscious were good. You cannot, and nobody listening to us today can afford to not repress. You have to. Otherwise, you can't do anything. You'd be overwhelmed with information and data coming in. It's too much coming in. You wouldn't be able to organize it. Yes, patients who are catatonic don't have this anymore because we have medications that soften things quite a bit. But in the 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, there would be back wards of hospitals and people who were, quote, catatonic, unquote. That's because they had lost the capacity to repress, and everything was coming in.
Oh, wow.
Everything was coming in. And so they were terrified. So they sat in a corner and just tried to because there was just so much data.
I looked for the deepest way into my darkness, the way that would go beyond myself. The prayers of the mystics, the rituals of the ancients, every candle lit, used to open me up to something deeper within, something beyond who I was and how I saw myself.
to experience what the alchemists call the Nigredo, or the black stage of alchemy, which is really the beginning of the whole unfolding of these different stages of the alchemical opus. And for me personally, it was very much the dark night of the soul and a confrontation with things deep within myself that I hadn't allowed myself to feel or to experience up until then. And when I finally did, it was life-shattering, and everything seemed to kind of fall apart. And this was a very real, very tangible experience. And at the time, I was just sort of beginning to explore the relationship between alchemy and creativity and opening up the unconscious.
I don't think I wanted to wake up. I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to feel anything anymore. It didn't matter if my eyes were open or closed, I was in darkness anyway. It slipped though. It started to tear further. There were things inside, pain, that went far deeper than what happened to me. Far deeper than the train crash. There was the broken relationships and the betrayals. The loss of myself started feeling more inevitable as I drowned in my darkness, falling further.
Crucial to the transformation of it. When that period in my life started, it was in response to actually a DMT trip that for me was like a near-death experience, totally unexpected. And at the time, I'd been feeling like just very stuck and unable to connect with some deeper part of myself. And so I kind of had this mantra, and I was walking around like, I need to be broken open. I need to be shattered. And
Careful what you wish.
I got what I wanted. And so I had this experience and confronted what literally felt like the prima materia. I lost all sense of self, and there was no recollection of who I was or a memory of my life. And I went into this very chaotic and cold and indifferent place where there was really no differentiation between anything. It was just complete chaos. And that was my whole experience while on the DMT, which only lasts 5 or 10 minutes. But I came out of it, and overnight, it was like my entire nervous system had been changed in this way that things that used to help me self-regulate and stay calm, and all of my meditative practices and yoga, going for long walks, all of these things just no longer worked because they would induce panic. Because it was like I had had this near-death experience, and now my body knew that there was just very close to this level of reality. There was this other place, this other experience of chaos. And I felt like I could slip back into that at any point. And so anything that reminded me of that feeling of moving into another world, like we get maybe when we're meditating or receiving body work, anything like that would just immediately induce panic. And it took me a while to figure out that there are other ways to deal with this besides altered states of consciousness. And as I started painting and allowing these kind of scary things that I was confronting, because along with all of this were all of these kind of unacknowledged parts of myself, these shadow aspects that were coming to the surface. And that was another layer of it, was just this difficulty of like, wow, there's all this stuff here that I've never really looked at. And it's not really that pretty or pleasant to deal with. And the way that I was able to understand it and acknowledge these shadow aspects and integrate them was through projecting them outward in the form of art. So through poetry and writing and music, and allowing my dreams to kind of influence that process as well, because as the dream world is the unconscious world. And so a lot of things that we're not aware of will appear symbolically in dreams and communicate to us. And the more we pay attention to that and interact with it, the more we can learn and the deeper we can go. I did start doing more interpretation and allowing those dream symbols and concepts to influence the art that I was creating. And so whether I'm writing a poem or painting a picture or maybe writing a song, there's this way of kind of, I don't know, meditating upon dream symbology from the night before and allowing it just to speak for itself,
Mm.
to create a narrative for itself, even if it doesn't make sense, because a lot of times it really doesn't. And through that process, you start to connect it with things that are happening within your life and things that you've been experiencing on the daily. The Hermetic idea, the axiom that we're all familiar with, as above, so below, is really the essence of this archetypal idea that these archetypes, they're very real and they exist within the cosmos, but they're also reflected within us and vice versa. And so we can connect to them through the body and we can connect to them through the mind. And we can also connect to them through our observations of nature and these celestial movements that are happening in the cosmos.
You begin to focus, to breathe, to pray, to somehow find your way through the darkness of this vast place. Even though you're isolated, even though you're alone, you're somehow in an ocean, somehow in a place that is different, yet familiar. You become disorientated. You lose track of time and of space. You're not sure if you're inside or outside of your own body anymore. Is it psychosis or madness, or is it the detachment of the Buddhists? Are my prayers being reached? Are they reaching anywhere? Am I speaking to anything or anyone? Are there parts of me that are listening? Why am I here? Why can't I walk away? Withdrawals start to kick in. Dopamine is so difficult to let go of. So is everything you used to be. In the ancient mysteries, this was called the morning of Isis. There's a formula in magic known as the E01. Isis, Apophis, Osiris. It speaks of the death of the old Osiris, the old self. The thing that's died, I'm not going to find in that phone anymore. This is Isis mourning the loss of Osiris. The only way through is the birth of Horus, the rediscovery of vision. But it's so hard to see it, vision. There's no want. You have to make yourself get up. You have to make yourself wanted. Get up.
Thing I tell people, which is that the water that the shaman swims in is the same water that the psychotic drowns in. You gotta sit with it through the uncomfortableness. So with mirror gazing, for example, people often give up really early They have that emotional response, and that's their resistance. Okay. We have lots of different ways that we resist, but that's their resistance because we've been trained to believe that to see spirits or to see things is make believe. Like in school, you go to school and all of a sudden you're seeing something that's not real. It's an imaginary friend. I had the benefit of being born into a psychic family. So when teachers said something like that, I just assumed she was talking to other kids, that they had imaginary friends, but not me, because my grandmother could see what I could see and my sister could see what I could see. So I knew they were imaginary. Fear, first of all, comes out of dogma. It comes out of whether it's religious dogma or societal dogma, where we tell all kids, like I said, imaginary friends. So all of a sudden, all these experiences you have are just your imagination, which is not true. And we've been trained to doubt ourselves. But when we find that we're suddenly hit with fear or a physical sensation in our body, I used to get sick to my stomach, that is a resistance. That also can be used as a tool because it can tell you, if that's happening to you, that you are actually contacting something real, because you wouldn't be having that response in your body unless what you were experiencing was hitting your psychic barrier, if you will. Okay. People need to pay a lot more attention to themselves. When you see a spirit or you feel a spirit around you, or you're thinking about your beloved dead, what are you feeling in your body? Are you feeling a resistance? Are you feeling something that makes you feel anxious or makes your heart beat really fast or make you sick to your stomach or makes your throat clench up? That's a place you're blocking in your body. Spirit communication is incredibly normal. Like, it's one of the things that I think we don't realize. We go through history. People have been communicating with their ancestors pretty much since the beginning of time. I've been a practicing psychic or working with the public for over 30 years. I think we're going through psychic evolution. So I've been watching people, like, exponentially growth of people who are opening up to spirit. And a lot of people don't know what to do with that. So I think that what we have to do is we first have to go back to the empathic level before we even talk about what is spirit saying to me. We first have to be able to separate between what's mine and what's yours. Okay. I look at psychic ability as a spectrum, and that you're not going to find a medium who's not empathic. Okay. So to be empathic is the base level. That is the ability to feel other people's emotions, to feel the emotions of a situation. That is the bottom level. And that doesn't mean it's still not, wow, that's fucking awesome. Sorry. But if you're not, like, a person who has precognitive ability is first going to be an empath. A person who has mediumship ability is first going to be an empath.
The feeling overwhelms you. You need to focus. I need to work. I need to get my mind off of this. But in the back of my mind, it's there. I don't even know if I'm doing it right or wrong. It's definitely not something my mother would have been proud of. Not of the church, at least.
One of my good friends, she was raised Jehovah's Witness. She's a practicing witch at this point in her life, or when I met her, she already was. But when she was younger, she was Mexican. And so she had an Aztec, I think that's what she told me, relative was what it ended up being. It would sit next to her at night. And so this guy that looks like he's Native American, Native Mexican American, and he is standing there next to her with a knife. And she was terrorized for most of her childhood because she could see this, and she was raised Jehovah's Witness, so she was raised to believe that this was a demon. It wasn't until after she left the church and started experiencing her own psychic ability that she realized it had been a spirit guide the whole time who was standing guard over her while she slept.
I think there's a difference in the moment where you put both feet in, where you stop living divided. One part of you in the magic and one part of you in the superstition. There comes a time where you have to let go of the safety net and you have to dive all the way in, trusting yourself, trusting your spirit.
I do believe that a lot of demons basically mirror back at you what you expect. So if you're expecting a horrifying experience or you are afraid, then they might mirror that back at you to make you face that fear. Because that's a lot of what magic is about facing your fears in order to grow as a person.
What if I'm not the monster? What if the only reason I'm in this prison of my own doing is because of the stories I've told myself? Stories I believe that others told me about myself. Could I let myself out?
I would say that, so I view the demonic as divine intelligence, which was the original meaning of the word, basically. And so I view the demonic as natural forces in the universe. And I view magic as both a psychological tool and a tapping of those forces in order to cause direct change in my life. So I can steer the trajectory of my life. So I absolutely do believe that a lot of magic is psychological, especially, I'm a firm believer in doing actual ritual in the physical world and not just the astral, because I think you get something from that. I think if you're willing to put in the effort, the easier it is to set your mind to something or to make yourself aware of something. And you can use that to basically manifest what you want in your life. And I think the demonic oftentimes brings us opportunities. They bring us the support, to help us find our inner strength, because, the demonic is within us as well. Since the demonic makes up the natural universe, we are part of that natural universe. And so therefore we are also demonic.
So maybe it wasn't the monsters or the demons after all. Maybe the only reason I thought of them as bad was because we've been so conditioned that we are bad, that we are sin, that our nature is sin. But what if our nature is so much more? What if deep inside there was something else, and the only way to get there was to let go?
It started, I could foresee them. I couldn't always hear them. But I think I was just always open to it, because for some people it's a very natural thing. For other people, you kind of have to work to that. But it did get to a point where I was actually doing some scrying and I saw this horrific image in the mirror. Cause right when you're scrying, as everything clears and you kind of move beyond that fade, if you get an image that startles you or scares you, you automatically pull back. That's your natural reaction to that. And I think that's the hardest part, is getting past those fearful images. There was a period probably from age 18 to 23 where I had all but shut down my spirit communication because I had a bad experience with a scrying mirror. And so, and it was fear. I saw this horrific image, and it was probably what I wanted to see. something terrifying because I think we were working with Hecate, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And this image came to me, and it was absolutely horrific. It was a woman with just skin peeling off and these white eyes and this dead looking thing.
Sure.
And it scared me so bad. I tried to block off the ability to communicate with the spirits. And it kind of like came back with a vengeance. I started having these nightmares of dead people, dead animals, dead things. And they were continuous. And it really, it really made me face some fears. And I think you're right. Like if you go into the situation fearing the spirits that you're calling on to work with, you bring that fear on yourself. But they would not stay quiet. They wanted me to hear them. And finally, I had to go to someone more experienced than me and have them kind of teach me how to not be afraid again.
Wow.
So, and I did that through a series of exercises where I basically just faced that fear and just did it over and over and over again. And when I realized they couldn't hurt me as long as I didn't allow it, as I didn't hurt myself, so to speak, then we could have a productive dialogue.
You couldn't avoid the fear any longer. You had to go in. You have to go into your darkness. You have to find the parts there that are scared. And you have to face them. I was a raw, exposed nerve. Everything I felt, and none of the old defenses worked anymore. I could hear them. I could feel them. I wondered if I could control them or if they were controlling me. Was it in my head?
Spirits or with demons. If you want to live this by a bargain relationship, trying to make them the slaves, they will also put you on test and put left and leave you alone in the middle of the crossroad.
Yes.
You can become addicted to the visuals and to the magic and everything, or you can try to force them, and either way won't work. So what Belial said to you, you want to be my equal? Great, I'll take you to the best life you can have. You want to be up or down me?
Yes.
Things will crash.
It didn't matter what they were. If they were parts of me or parts of God or the devil. I just knew that if I didn't respect myself, those parts couldn't respect me. I needed to get back to where I was going. I needed to focus and execute on what was inside of me. I had to become proud of myself again. I had to be able to believe in myself. Or how could anything or anyone? It wasn't about begging. It was about proving. About becoming. There's a deep relationship I felt in myself and them. And if I wanted to change my life, I had to change myself. had to do the work.
First, really emphasize that it's not a game, it's something utmost serious, and that you must accept that there are intelligences and they are countless, and that it's far more intelligent than human intelligence, and that also can travel and move in more dimensions than we can. So that means that we must have a certain respect to this. That's why we completely, and that is more or less Nigredo made a paradigm shift from this traditional, as I say, Solomonic attitude that you, by the name of different angels and names of God, command some demons to do some business for you. When you realize that these demons are much more intelligent than any of the magicians or necromancers who try to evoke them, then you can start dealing with these forces for real. But that's why we don't use this with circles and so on. Maybe a little bit in the beginning, but we have getting away from the mindset that we have these good white forces with angels and so on, and then we have the bad boys like the demons. And rather questioned, perhaps there are things so simple that the night by itself it's not evil and the day is not by itself good. Perhaps it's so with the different deities out there. They act and they have different natures, but it's not the case of simple Abrahamic moralism. So we erased this and instead said that, okay, we have respect that these are intelligences that are more intelligent than us, but we want to learn from them. Because it's something we know from the scriptures about these deities is that they come to mankind to learn mankind things.
The world's things were done. After my affairs were in order, the last thing that I had to overcome was myself. To surrender, to get out of the way, to give up my conceptions, my illusions, my stories, my thinking that I know what this is.
This part of the initiatory system to go through a period where you look upon the spirit from quite psychological and intellectual way, and also where you get the kind of partnership with the deities. But what comes as a little bit as a surprise to many is that then at the next level, you go into what the Indians call bhakti, which in this case is a kind of worship. And you go through because you need to be passionate and you need to respect that these are what we have called gods or demons through the ages. And with this worship, you get a wider spectrum to make this relation more powerful. But then you come to the Black Sun level, and then it's beyond both partnership and worship. You have become one of them.
Oh, my beloved, hidden, secret God of my own unconscious, hidden essence of my own being, my own transcendent self, you who have been behind every step and every thought, every word and every deed. You are both the God of darkness and of light, of life and of death, master of the divine and of the daemonic. For you alone close the door, and you alone can open it. Reveal to me that part that has been hidden, that secret chapter within myself that has kept me a slave. I want to meet it. I want to know the truth of my own nature. I want to watch as the walls of lies are destroyed. Burn away the false illusions, and invite me into the temple of my own soul, where I may know you, and those spirits that are obedient unto you. May they be obedient unto me. I invoke and call forth the guide of truth that will lead me through the presence of my own darkness and awaken me unto the new life, that I may rejoice in all the things I desire. And I know that through so doing I must overcome what I once was. Empower me to do so, to liberate myself from myself. I surrender, I release, I let go. Show me the truth and show me the lie. I invoke bunch. How am I going to explain this one?